Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Before getting started with project updates, I'd like to make some small announcement. First one is information on leaflet B07B was wrong. So it is a big enough talk, but leaflet is another unused work. So it is probably leftover from last year's book slot, but it's coming up. Sorry for the mistake. And another second announcement is fund registration records at 4 p.m. So, and we will depart at 6 p.m. I announced at the beginning of the paper session. So please double check the map at the registration desk. And the last one is, so there is no daylight saving time in Japan. Well, you do not need to adjust the clock tomorrow morning, but the session tomorrow morning will start at 9 a.m., not 10 a.m. like today. So please do not forget the time difference. So let's get started with the paper project updates. So we will have the four talks from the representative on the four organizations. So first talk will be FreeBSD Foundation. So please get ready. So today, Ms. David Goodkin, the Executive Director of FreeBSD Foundation, will give a talk for the FreeBSD Foundation. FreeBSD Foundation is a non-profit in the U.S. to support FreeBSD project and promoting FreeBSD. And please visit Foundation table on the ground floor. And please say hi.
Well, hi everyone. Thank you for reminding me. My name is Deb Goodkin, and like Sada Sunset, I'm the Executive Director of the FreeBSD Foundation. First, before I get started, I wanted to give a small gift to Sada-san. The FreeBSD Foundation is a US-based company like Sada-san said, and we're actually based in Colorado, Boulder, Colorado. We have local suites from Boulder. Justin's, which is now probably international, so I don't know if people, this is a healthier version of peanut butter cups. And then my favorite is we have a local company in Boulder called Chocolove. And so I don't know if people have actually seen this before. And I brought both dark and milk chocolate because I know I love dark chocolate. My husband loves milk chocolate. And so I don't know if it's a female or male thing, so I brought you both. And then the last thing that I'd like to present you with, this is from everyone at the foundation. And it's a sake. And it says, "Thank you, Sada-san." There you go. Okay, well, let's get started. Well, this is my first time in Japan. And so, obviously, it's my first time at AsiaBSDCon, and I'm thrilled to be here. Who else is their first time, at least at AsiaBSDCon? Raise your hand. So it's a good number. It's good. But it's so exciting to see how large it's grown. We've been a sponsor of AsiaBSDCon, I don't know for how long. I'd have to ask let us on that. For probably about 10 years. It seems like I've been with the foundation for 11, and it seems like we've been sending checks for 11 years. So anyway, so I'm going to try to make this quick, but I'm going to try to speak slowly too. So I just want to talk to you about, or tell you who we are and what we do. So we have 8 board members. So like I said, we're a nonprofit, so we are governed by a board. And so now we have faces to each board member. I would say almost all of our board members are here, except for Robert. So and please, if you have any questions, you want help or anything, please approach any of us who are here. We have 6 staff members. A couple of us are here, and but this way it has a face for you, for people who you might be talking to over email. So both Ed and I are here. Ed is the Director of Project Development, so it's more of the technical software development work that we do. And you may have heard of, she does all of our advocacy, and that's actually for the FreeBSD project. She does a lot of literature. She sets up conferences and helps a lot of our community members. Glenn, most of you know, or you may know, he's actually our full-time release engineer for the project. Sabina is our she's office manager, assistant, does a lot of support for us, and then Kostik is a software engineer based out of Ukraine. So the board and our staff do reside all around the world, so we are an international company. Our purpose, it's basically to help make FreeBSD the best platform for any use that you want. So what do we support? I'll try to go through this quickly. Basically, the release engineering, we have full-time person on staff, like I said, with Glenn, as well as the infrastructure, so that includes cluster administration and the hardware that we purchase for the project, and we maintain and support. Software development, and we have internal people who do OS improvements, add features, as well as outside projects that we fund. Technical leadership we provide, whether it's like a community group that is working on maybe graphics or some specific technology, we might participate in that, help facilitate those conversations. Advocacy and education. Education is definitely a big area we would like to grow. We're trying to work on a curriculum and teach FreeBSD around the world. And it might be from like a 1-hour workshop to a full semester class. We provide legal support, so if core team has a legal question, then they'll come to us and they'll provide that guidance. And lastly, things like this. We will sponsor conferences like this. We will also sponsor FreeBSD days or BSD days and developer summits and small user groups too. So the area, so we are 100% funded by donations, and so if we raise more money, then the areas that we would like to increase, modernize and improve developer tools, so that's developer infrastructure, help with the security team, and increase our presence in other regions that we're not. We've been increasing that awareness in India and China right now. Add more project management support, and lastly, increase our partnerships with commercial users, and so that would be big companies that we might go to help facilitate collaboration between those companies and the FreeBSD project. So, with that said, I'm thrilled to announce a partnership with Intel, what the partnership means is that we're going to work with them to collaborate and facilitate the work on increasing and adding support for FreeBSD in many of the Intel technologies and products. And so with that, Intel has recognized the importance of FreeBSD, and they have committed to giving us a $250,000 donation to help us with our work. And so we've been working on this for a long time, and this is something that we really want to grow, but what we did is our Intel representative liaison is here, and he's going to give a talk about this work that we're going to do and why they see that this is so important. And so I'd like to introduce Glenn Weinberg. And we're going to trade off here.
Thanks. Now we get to go from USB-C back to Thunderbolt and make sure that everything actually works. But it's all Intel technology, so it's all good. Yeah, I tested it earlier. The HDMI did not work. So anyway. As Deb said, we've been working on establishing a collaboration between Intel and FreeBSD for some time, and I'm really pleased to be here today to be able to kick things off and announce the contribution that we've made. Most of you don't know me. Those of you in the room who do know me barely know me. So Deb asked me to just spend a second telling you about who I am so that you have some level of understanding of why I'm here, among other things. I actually do know a couple of people in the BSD community extremely well, but they're not here today. So I'm actually an operating system guy. I've been an operating system guy for way more years than I would like to admit. Back when I was actually a developer, before I went to the dark side and became a manager, I was actually a kernel developer. My first Unix operating system that I worked on actively was 4.2 BSD in 1984. And my first major project was, sorry Kurt, multi-threading FFS. I spent 17 years at Sun Microsystems, mostly either in the Solaris organization or working with the Solaris organization as a director and VP in that organization. At the time, we were developing technologies like NFS-v4 and CFS. They were actually developed directly in my organizations, and I actually was the leader of the team that open sourced Solaris back before Oracle un-open sourced Solaris. So I've been at Intel for 2 years now. I started in the storage group in the data center organization, which is actually where I started reconnecting with the BSD community because we have a number of customers in the storage space in particular, along with security and some other areas that utilize FreeBSD in particular. And at this time, I'm a senior strategist in what we call our strategic software initiatives team within the software organization at Intel. A lot of people don't realize that even though Intel is a very large hardware organization, we actually have a very large software organization as well, and we're one of the largest contributors to open source in the world. We are the biggest contributor to that other open source operating system, but we don't like to talk about that here so much. But we also try very much to not focus in any particular area. In addition to that other open source operating system, we obviously work very closely with other commercial operating systems, and today we're very pleased to talk about improving our collaboration with FreeBSD. It's not like we're starting from scratch. We've been working with the FreeBSD community increasingly over the last few years for things like supporting networking devices, SSDs, new technologies as we've developed them, like Intel Quick Assist. For those of you that aren't familiar with that, very quickly, it's basically accelerators for things like encryption and compression, and being able to access those efficiently from a variety of operating systems and applications is something we've been focusing on. We do support our tools and our libraries on FreeBSD, including compilers, our vTune performance optimization tools, and we've added things like the Intelligent Storage Acceleration Library into FreeBSD. In general, we have other projects that we've worked on as well that we almost always multiple license, and typically one of the licenses that we'll release under is the BSD license. So the software that we do release is available. So specifically what we're announcing today, and we will also have some more public announcements in the US that will kick off on Monday, is a more active engagement, as Deb said, with the FreeBSD project. We're doing this because we've gotten a lot of feedback from some of our significant customers that they want broader support and better support and more timely support for FreeBSD on Intel platforms. As I mentioned, we do a lot of open source work and a lot of commercial work, and so this is very much in line with our general philosophy for software development at Intel. And we, as Deb mentioned, are hopeful that better collaboration will help to enable us to support a wider variety of devices and tools and applications. And another thing that's driving this is that Intel, everybody knows Intel is a CPU company, and we absolutely are still a CPU company, but we're also moving into things that we call internally adjacencies, areas that are close to the CPU but are not the CPU. And in particular, things like acceleration technologies, not just with Quick Assist, but also with Intel's acquisition of Altera, moving more into the FPGA space, and how we make FPGAs more directly accessible to applications. In particular, our focus in the memory space with our increased product line around SSDs, and then specifically around our 3D XPoint technology, which will be starting to become available this year and in a more expanded way next year, really enables. It's when I joined Intel 2 years ago and learned about what we were doing with 3D XPoint, I was really amazed that it was even possible to build something like that. My experience has been that it's really hard to explain the impact of a technology like 3D XPoint to people that aren't systems software people. Well, you all are, and so I'm hoping that you will understand the impact of a technology that potentially allows hundreds of gigabytes or terabytes of persistent memory to be available in a system, right? It just fundamentally changes the way that software can be designed. So we're really excited to be able to make a $250,000 donation to the foundation, to the FreeBSD Foundation today, and that's not all we're going to do. We are going to continue to do more work, both with the community and within Intel. I want to be clear, we're not setting up an operating system group within Intel or anything like that, but we will be doing a lot more work and making sure that we get as much as we can supported in as timely a fashion as we can moving forward. Thanks a lot. Glad to be here.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to the next work by FreeBSD project.
Wait for it. Oh no, spinning. Do it. 立ってください。立ってください。Ah. Okay. Here. When I spent a whole day with this stupid thing, I can put it on for another 15 minutes. So, quick-ish update. Let's see, where are we? Okay. I've got my 15 minutes. On the FreeBSD project, actually, hand me that microphone. See if I can do this without breaking anything. So, this one goes to 11. A joke that will not work at all here, but I'm going to play this damn video anyway. Can you hear him? Look very closely. The volume goes to 11. Everyone laugh. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to stop this video. Go watch Spinal Tap. So let's talk about why we keep making this joke and why I really want FreeBSD 12 to come out, because there are no 12 jokes that I know, and so I won't have to do that stupid video for the next 3 conferences. So some of the changes we made in FreeBSD 11 and that we were making after the release of FreeBSD 11. So I always like to lead with the removal of software, because as a software engineer, I actually, they always say that I'm not a vegetarian because I love animals. I'm a vegetarian because I hate vegetables. I'm an operating systems developer because I hate software. In FreeBSD 11, we actually removed support for something called IA64. Sorry, well, you joined Intel long after that. So we no longer have IA64. I'd like to remove Spark 64 and 12. Am I on video? But let's talk about new software, which came in to replace the old software. So we now have full support for ARM64. This is due to the development efforts of Andy Turner, who happens to be here, which is why I put his name on the list. Semi-Half, Cavium, ARM, the company ARM itself, and the FreeBSD Foundation helped to fund this work. The community then helped to make sure the work actually did work. So we've got full support for ARM64 in the 11 release, and that is continuing to improve with, more performance, more cores. If you're looking at high-end ARM-based servers now, you're looking at 2 packages, 48 cores each to start, which means that you have to have relatively good locking primitives to make things scale. Otherwise, they scale like this. Continuing to work on the UEFI features, we now have the ability to do secure boot signing, which is kind of the first thing we need to do to get a full secure boot stack in the system. We added ZFSD. Let's see, I'm not in Europe, but I'll still say ZFSD for managing things like hot spares and giving you more ZFS goodness. If you ever go to a talk by Alan Jude, you will hear more about ZFS than I'll tell you about it. Here it's a file system. We board BlacklistD, so this is done by Christos Zolas, who is actually a NetBSD developer. This replaces a lot of the ad hoc scripts that people have done to blacklist people's IPs who keep trying to log in as root on your SSH. This is highly amusing. So dtrace and HWPMC support continue to improve on PowerPC. To the point where actually I have to admit that the dtrace code works slightly better on PowerPC than ARM32. So I have some bugs to fix. So that's in 11. Tons of drivers, and we all know that we don't have bugs, but we do have bug fixes in FreeBSD. We don't have any bugs. All right, so that's 11. Let me talk about a couple of features and talk a little more in depth about them. How many people have heard of capabilities in Capsicum? Good, because this room, if none of you raise your hands, I was going to be super disappointed. So capabilities were a dead technology from the 1970s that was resurrected by Robert Watson in his PhD thesis and continues to be worked on in systems like Capsicum, which is what we use in FreeBSD for sandboxing applications. So there are currently about 40 or 50 programs that have been capsicumized. I will not make the inappropriate joke that always makes me think of, but it starts with a C. So things like TCP dump. Actually, when we do TCP dump, when someone first said that they were going to do TCP dump, I was like, why do you care? And it turns out there are well-known security interop events in which people attack each other's TCP dumps while looking at traffic by trying to route through TCP dump. Like, okay, people are terrible. So TCP dump trace route thing. OpenSSH, at least on the server side and the authentication side, which that seems to be a more significant thing that you want and that more people would want more broadly. And yes. There you go. Thank you for being on cue. Lots of new features in virtualization, lots of new work in virtualization, and I also mention this because actually, perfect. One of the people working on virtualization is standing in the back. I don't have to ask him to stand. So support for virtual interrupt delivery on Intel VTX. So this improves the performance of virtualized systems by taking advantage of hardware features that now exist in the latest Intel VTX support. Support for SRIOV, which allows us to virtualize hardware that has support for SRIOV. Again, this is something that will, first of all, allow you to host more virtual machines, but also give you higher performance access to the underlying hardware. That's why you want things like SRIOV. Hyper-V driver updates, improvements to the network driver in particular, but many other areas of Hyper-V have been improved. So, Hyper-V and FreeBSD on Azure, all goodness there. And then for people who care about storing data, I'm a network person. I don't store data. I just transport it. Mostly I drop it. But Unmapped.io for the VirtIO drivers for VirtIO Block and VirtIO SCSI give us, again, a big performance boost in dealing with storing data, if you, again, wanted to store some data. And then one of the other virtualization technologies in QEMU, we now have more QEMU on ARM. In particular, we're operating in a mode where we're taking advantage of the fact that we're running ARM binaries on AMD 64 hardware, which means that, for instance, the package people are much happier because now they can generate packages very quickly, or more quickly. I only recently learned that you can use an unpronounceable French word, as a very strange virtual machine controller, because you can basically make QEMU run under it. So if you need an ARMv6 environment, you can build it up from Poudre. Baptiste keeps trying to teach me how to say that. Yeah, when you can get konyaku and konyaku different, then you're all set. Yes. We've, as I pointed out in the early slide, we've been doing a lot of work in the ARM area, both on 32-bit and on 64-bit ARM. The 32-bit ARM space, and you can see, I suspect, a ton of 32-bit ARM boards just outside that door on the NetBSD table. Making sure that more features that work on like the All-Winner boards and the BeagleBone boards and the other boards are well supported. So lots of feature fixes, lots of features added, and lots of things improved there. Again, Andy Turner has put in a generic kernel for ARMv6 and v7. Yeah. So it used to be you had to pick your kernel, unlike on, say, AMD64, where you could just say, build me a generic. Now you can build a generic for the 32-bit stuff. Of course, there was always a generic for ARM64. BeagleBone Black, which I'll mention on the last slide, gets a lot of attention because there are many of us using it in a bunch of different environments. So there have been a lot of fixes for little problems in that specific platform. Support for more ARM64 vendors. Cavium was sort of the lead vendor that we worked with to get the ARM64 work going. But if you go look up a company called SoftIron, who, by the way, are about to donate some very interesting high-powered ARM64 hardware to the Foundation test lab, they produce an interesting desktop ARM64 board, which is not ridiculously expensive, and server class hardware as well. And the Cavium stuff is still sort of still only for people who have other people's budgets. But the SoftIron stuff might actually be able to get away with it on most sides. Lastly, on this slide anyway, the Foundation funded the development of CFUMass. This allows you to take something like a BeagleBone Black and plug it into a USB port, and it just looks like a flash device. So we use this when we're teaching to put all of the materials for the class on the student's computer with which they will take the class. They plug the computer into their laptop, and then they have the material and the computer itself. It's actually pretty whizzy. I guess I should talk about networking, because me. So one of the things we've been doing, and I guess this group has now existed for over a year, is I collected together many of the well-known troublemakers in the TCP area on the FreeBSD project, and we do a bi-weekly hangout in which I ask the repeated question, so does anybody have anything else to say today? And in that group, a bunch of us have done quite a bit of work to fix bugs, review code, and begin to add newer and modern features to FreeBSD's TCP stack, some of which may have been lagging. some of that work, of course, is being funded. Netflix, Limelight, and other companies fund the developers. But the coordination is being done by the project and by the manager of networking, or whatever the heck my title is. So what are we working on? Randall Stewart has done an implementation of both RAC and BBR, which are new congestion control TCP algorithms developed. BBR was at Google. BBR is sort of the latest and greatest in congestion control. Netflix has been testing that out, so is Limelight. And so Randall has been writing a lot of their code, and Huron and the rest of the group have been chiming in and breaking it and hoping to get it fixed. So that'll be, this is sort of for upcoming releases, things that'll go into 12. There was work done to abstract the network driver boilerplate code. So if you've ever looked inside of a network, who's ever looked inside of a network driver? I'm really sorry. So if you look inside of most network drivers on most operating systems, not just FreeBSD or the other BSDs, there's probably 50 to 70% of the code is boilerplate. It's the code that actually is not hardware specific. The code that's hardware specific that diddles the memory and pokes at the bits is much smaller. So this set of code iflib was developed, which is the interface library. And now the project, Sean Bruno, Web, other people have been working to take the drivers out of the team at Intel in Portland, have been taking the network drivers in FreeBSD and converting them such that the network driver part is much smaller and hardware specific, and the boilerplate is just one library. And this means that we can concentrate all of the bugs from all of the drivers we've ever written in one library. And then I think we're supposed to fix them, but the bugs are definitely all in that library now. And it's supposed to make drivers easier to write. So, as you know, on FreeBSD, we have gotten all of the high-end, high-performance NIC vendors, Broadcom, Intel, Mellanox, Chelsea, Solarflare, to commit to developing drivers on FreeBSD. And our goal as a project is to try and make their lives less difficult. I won't say it's more easy, just less difficult. So I talked about lots of work and fixes on TCP. It turns out that nobody understands how TCP works, except for Ben Jacobson. So there have been bugs that have lingered in the BSDs generally and in other open source operating systems that will not be named, that people just don't notice until they have an interestingly extreme environment. So, actually this basement is an interestingly extreme environment because the wireless is, but for instance, a lot of the congestion control work that was done over the last 10 years doesn't work. Anybody have one of these in their pocket? It also turns out the entire country of Colombia uses one switch vendor. I know who it is. And we know that because every company I work with using FreeBSD's TCP code, they see a specific performance problem specific to a particular switch vendor always in Colombia. So Colombia is far enough away, and they triggered the bug, which actually Huron is fixed. So tons of fixes to congestion control, making sure that we are getting the right performance out of TCP. I added a bunch of dtrace stuff to TCP. I did not put a dtrace slide up. I could have. But if you are debugging TCP things with dtrace, I made that easier. For more on that, see the next slide. So, usually when we give these updates, we talk about, oh, we added this stuff to the kernel, and oh, GNN removed an entire thing, or someone else removed the ISP core. But to keep the project going, we need to have new people in the project, because I can tell you that I turned 50 this year, and I don't get to retire till I'm 65, but we need to make sure that new people in the, I'd like to retire at 40, but that didn't work. I'd like to make sure that people who work on FreeBSD, the new ones don't have this one. My chin? This was caused by network drivers. This was brown before I worked on a network driver. Anyway, so recruiting. What have we been doing around recruiting? Well, let's talk a bit about that. So, we're getting new doc ports and source committers. The project continues to attract people who want to work with us. I don't know why. Nice people, though. But one of the things that I've been working on, and since Sato-san made me do the presentation, I get to plug my work at the end of it. And actually, this is work done with Robert Watson and other people in the project and in this room. We've been developing courseware on something called teachbsd.org. So some of the tutorials I've taught at the various conferences, or with Benedict, who's in the back at the Hochschule Darmstadt, I pronounced that correctly, and which Robert has been teaching at the University of Cambridge. Yeah, well, it turns out that that's Britishy English. So these are all hosted on GitHub. They're all hosted online. The material is up for people to share. I have been personally going to various universities trying to convince them to use it, giving talks in various places about the material. And at this point, we now have graduate, undergraduate, and then if you take a tutorial, the practitioner classes. So this is one of the things that we've been trying to push harder on, because we need to have the next generation of kernel developers show up. And I can tell you that when you go and talk to undergraduates, they are not excited by operating systems. Some of them are, but not many of them are. There's a problem with that. Operating systems, I guess I'm on tape. Operating systems still suck. And people are now going to take our operating systems and they're going to put them into the Internet of Things. By the way, the fact that when I make IoT jokes, all the engineers laugh means that we are in real trouble, because the people responsible for making them work don't think they will. So one of the things we have to do is not only bring new people into the BSDs and FreeBSD, but also make sure there's another generation of developers who understand things like multi-threading and concurrency and security and networking and all of the things that will make the modern world work. So with that, that was the last thing I did. The most recent practitioner bit is the thing I just taught this week, dtrace for developers, which, if you missed it this time, come to Ottawa in June. I can guarantee you excellent poutine. I can't explain what poutine is, but I hear it's excellent. And I will teach it again. So that's what we've been up to. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next one is NetBSD. So who? Please get ready.
HDMI does work, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not HDMI, of course.
This would be a really, really short one.
No, small one. What are your hands?
Hello. Hello. Everybody enjoying their conference? You don't know me. Most of you don't. You probably never even heard of me. There we go. Well, we don't manage our style. Let me deal with the technical aspect of it first, and then jump right in. Probably need words. See through. But it has awesome stuff in there. Work. Okay. Yes. Okay. That's my great stuff right there. I have absolutely no artistic skills whatsoever when it comes to using PowerPoint or any type of.
Push that one. Put the mic slightly closer. Battery dead?
Test. There we go. Okay, my apologies. I also make lots of weird things around. So, yes. And actually, this is my first presentation in front of a large group in probably almost 2 decades. So. All right. So, that's me. Well, I'm me, actually. I'm the president of the NetBSD Foundation, and I don't know why people chose me to be that position, because I guess they like me. You can find me on Twitter, on Freenode. I know some of the cross-developers of OpenBSD and FreeBSD and Darwin in the early days. I'm old. I'm not like Kirk old, and I'm not like. And I'm 51, still got my hair. So, yeah. So, I started out when somebody said, hey, there's this new, they put together a group from the early 386 BSD, and we want to see if we can get working on our Amigas. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. I actually developed Amiga hardware and make Amiga accelerators and various other stuff in another life a long time ago. So what I was doing was basically getting NetBSD to work on this hardware, and I found that it was really fun to do, and that's how I got into NetBSD, bringing our Amiga port into the tree. And from that point, I had actually started off with the Amiga mailing lists for the developers. We were actually separate from NetBSD at that point. We had our mailing server on Commodore's VAX in Philadelphia. And then we moved it to Sunland, which was what became the very beginning of the mailing list. And then I just started handling system administration stuff, making sure our FTP servers were working. Somehow got into being the next port master, and then I created the administration group, which basically what I did was I found people who actually wanted to do the system administration part, not just work on developer stuff, because I found that most developers want to develop and not worry about the hardware or making sure that there's a system set up for how people actually get the software. Let's see, and then I worked on a PowerPC port for a company that ended up going out of business, which was doing Yellow Dog Linux, obviously. I mean, weird to just. And so that was late 90s at that point. And then in the last year and a half, I got onto the board of directors for NetBSD. I've been focusing solely on what the board does and how we can integrate with the core and developers to make that system work much better. Let's see. And like I said, I've done other boring things in life. You can go look at my LinkedIn and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so this happened. And yeah, there's that word, that Internet of Things. And I just wanted to make sure that, because he brought up the thing that we should all be kind of terrified of about the Internet of Things. This one actually won't kill you, at least not yet. Like I said, maybe in the next release. And I hope that enough people get the reference to Skynet to realize where that was going with the Internet of Things. And anyway, so we've been around for 24 years. And yeah, I'll gloat a little. We committed before FreeBSD did. And yeah, and I also remember the little spats on little battles, and then there was the whole OpenBS thing, the BSD thing that we just really don't talk much about. And I'm going to Canada, and I'm wondering if Theo's going to be there. Okay. So, yeah, we're old. We work on, our goal is to work on as many CPU architectures as we can possibly find. If it's almost like if it's got an MMU, we want to talk to it. We aren't really too terribly focused on the leading edge, but we are very committed to supporting the trailing edge, the ones that have been sitting in your closet, the ones that you loved to play on when you were younger, and still giving you some sort of ramp up to be somewhat current and being able to run. 57 ports. The release of engineering of 57 ports. So I just threw up just a very few of those. I mean, you can obviously hit the web page. And like I said, this is basically me doing PowerPoint with a crayon. And you can see we actually have RC2 of 7.1, which is our current development, which is about to be released. 7.0.2 is our current actual release. So when 7.1 is done, that's great, because then we begin that one. And we've got a lot scheduled for 8. Our head is, not my head, but the trunk is so different from the 7 branch that doing backports becomes excessively difficult because there's so much code that has changed, and 8 just looks really, really exciting. We now have fully reproducible builds. That sounds kind of boring, but it's actually kind of cool. We've got packs in protect, ASLR, and position intimate. Pi, we've got improvements to our file system of WebBL. I'm getting the dry mouth now. We've got Zen modules that we've started. We've got contractors working on that. We've got some more. We've got upstairs, we've got a Luna 68K up there. They brought a Luna 88K. I would love to see that eventually get into NetBSD tree, because I know there's probably very little interest of FreeBSD even remotely going in that direction. And I'm not sure how long the OpenBSD support for that will end up lasting. These are some of our developers. He's working on unifying the AMD 64 and x68 address comments, but he's trying to reduce the amount of differences in the address space between the two arches, so we can kind of merge together those trees into more of a, not quite a single tree, but much less diverse. We've got NVMe. Who comes up with these initials? Come on, let's have a nice.
We
nice.
do.
So we hate each other, apparently. We come up with these things that we can't say really fast, like NVMe. That's what I work on, NVMe. Okay, so got that going. Neil's working on ptrace and getting better GDB supporting that. L2TP. And then the stuff that I was looking at here at the conference, which just knocked my socks off, was what the IIJ team was doing with Saito-san and his crew, working on NP-SafeNet and the QAT part of that Intel slide you saw a little bit earlier, the quick access thing. That's stuff going on too. And the higher speed network cards. Good old Chuck worked on UCB for so long, I believe. Fixed dtrace support, more work going on in that area. Bind needed to be dealt with. So we brought BSD and Unbound into the tree. And yeah, it is sounding like, whoa, no. Full on denial there. Okay, so, and that's how you have a great day turn into a, oh my God, it's on fire. All right, let's go back to the prison. And I can't even use the excuse of my dog ate my paper. This is just me fighting with, go to the next one. There we go. And yeah, it is sounding like release notes. Okay, let me speed that up a little. Google Summer Code, we had a great 2016. It was wonderful. Our developers there. One of them's here, somewhere over there, who actually didn't have enough punishment, so he came back to do a talk similar to this here, because he needs more pain in his life. Another student worked on getting more POSIX compatibility, working on that. Leo T helped greatly with getting us be able to work on our package builds for the debug part of it. And we were just recently accepted in 2017, looking forward to mentoring new students and doctorating them into our inclusive and diverse development. Okay. Dinosaur. So yeah, the big thing that we were happy with was we actually had students from the previous Summer of Code now being mentors for us to new students, and we want to keep that cycle continuing. We moved to a content distribution network. We've had impressive results. Quick update on that. You know, we pretty much have a fault-tolerant system. And here's where you get an idea of what we're looking at. We're really interested in Power 8 support. We think that that's a very, I'm not sure we're going to work on Little Indian. We'll probably work on Big Indian for it, but we're also going to get ARM64 committed into it and updated. And we want to work with more vendors, as you guys have obviously seen how wonderful it is to when you get big vendors to come help your project. So, let's see. So, all of that, trying to do, okay, we have the 3 trees that are in work, but trying to keep track of all of them. I just want to say, let's pretend that there's flying cars, that we're going to have NetBSD on the moon and Mars, because that's what we're shooting for. And a little bit of package source update. Package source is old too. 50th quarterly release. On time. Interviews. Is 20 years old, which is more stable and lively than most of us. Yeah, mostly. We put REST in package source, got it going. Firefox is running on the Spark 64, which I hear from some other group in here is going to die. But we'll keep it alive. Let's see. Our first quarter of 2017 is just about to happen. We should be freezing that or making that happen. So anyway, thank you for putting up with my stuttering, my machine dying on me, and everything that has made this happen. This is my first time in Japan. I'm just back there raising my hand. I'm absolutely humbled by all of you. It's just you're wonderful, kind people that I look forward to working with. And I hope that wasn't too long. We're going to work on NetBSD 8 and hopefully at BSDCon. I will not look. This was thrown together in 45 minutes, even though it actually took much longer. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. So the last talk is OpenBSD. Yep.
It's thinking.
What's the magical force of team?
X1R.
If all of those work. Fellow OpenBSD developers, X-Render magic, where are you?
X-Render output thingy, write-up thingy, auto.
Yeah.
There's a way to force the right mode, but I forgot it. Dash mode. Yes, but which?
Yeah, just you list them first.
Dash Q.
How?
Pick the right, just run X1R without arguments if you list them.
Yes, come over and help me.
Recompile the kernel.
I don't understand that, but anyway. So, now I'm finally ready. I have 10 minutes left, I guess. I'm Henning. I've been with OpenBSD for 15 years now. It's almost my first time in Japan. And I'll give you a quick, very subjective and completely incomplete OpenBSD update, and I expect you to heckle all the things that I forgot at the end. I've never talked about SMP before here, so we had the entire forwarding part unlocked in current for some time. It actually works, but we're disabling that for the next release. But we are very positive that in 6.2 we will finally get there. In the same vein, we got per CPU counters in a lot of places, so that that they can update counters without a lock and not mistake and other bits. We got per CPU caches in pool, which is very, very important to us, since that's the memory backend for almost everything that cares about performance in the kernel. And we got multiple transmit queues for a couple of network drivers, finally. And all this helps with SMP, of course, or will help. Right now, it only helps a little bit. Our virtual machine manager and the associated daemons, we grew i386 support, as in 32-bit. Mike thinks that's important.
Let's find bugs.
It finds bugs, yes, that's the prime reason. The DMD part got privset for this fork in exec and is pledged, so the security improved. The performance improved a lot, so it's getting closer to be very usable for production use and not just for development or quick tests. A lot happened in the Wi-Fi area. We got this shiny new technology called 11N. We got MIMO for it. Well, 11N was their last release, but now we got MIMO for it. We got 11N support for ADHN. We got a RAID adoption called Mira, which was actually designed for 11N, and Stefan can explain you why it's so much greater than the previous ones. Did I mention we got 11N? No. So we got 11N. And due to the security problems, we disabled WPA1 by default, so you don't accidentally get this when you want WPA2. A lot happened in libSSL. The libSSL man pages have been rewritten. The libcrypto man pages have been written. There was nothing to rewrite. There was a big churn to make programs using libSSL being able to or produce error messages that people actually understand. That was a major effort. Ask Bob for details. There were gazillions of small fixes and improvements and everything that I cannot explain, so if you want to know more about this, ask JC or Bob. We got the ACME client imported. That's the thing to talk to the Let's Encrypt and Familiar SSL certs, CAs. And we got a little OCSP check thing to check for revoked certificates on the command line. Random highlights. We overhauled our build system substantially, so it now has to be started as root, but then drops privileges and runs as a dedicated user for base and X. In the next release, and I expect that to be true for future releases, we'll have official signed binary patches, so we don't have to rely on a third party anymore. We replaced XDM by XenoDM, which Mathieu wrote for us. And there's ongoing work on switch and switchd and switch control. So basically, switch is an in-kernel switch, last not least supposed to replace the bridge. And the user end and the bridge mostly talk OpenFlow. And the switch D talks OpenFlow to an external switch. So switch control either controls the internal switch or an external one, and it looks like it's the same, almost. We also got ARM64 with quite a few bits from FreeBSD actually. We got LLVM in base, and we got our first architecture that actually uses LLVM, that is ARM64, and that is a much greater undertaking than it sounds. It's not just import LLVM to base and you're done. It's little fixes, adoptions all over the tree. With TSC time counters make a comeback because Intel fixed this in their CPUs. Thank you for that. And it turns out at the same time, ACPI HBAT is not usable for our purposes in new machines anymore because it's too slow. So that actually is a hard problem because we need precise timestamps in many places, and they should be cheap, and getting a precise time cheaply is surprisingly hard. Let's just call it that, surprisingly hard. The installer now uses HTTPS to fetch stuff instead of plain HTTP. Our little deep trace alike, it got IPv6 support and improved, so you're using 312 in the user guide for now. There's greatly improved Hyper-V support. Then support 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was last release.
That was last release. See, I rely on you guys actually. Our base system is almost entirely pledged, so I don't have a list of programs here because it's everything. And I just got to mention VTech, ASLR, and Pi since 1981 or so. We grew Estonian keyboard support.
Yay!
We got powered his Luna 88K on again. And OpenBSD works pretty well. It's a supported platform that just works. I think you can see it upstairs, right? Right?
Yes.
Yes. Anything else today? Thank you.
Okay, so let's conclude this session, and yeah. We will have a relatively long break before the afternoon paper session. So we will start the afternoon paper session at 3 p.m. So 30 minutes. So please visit sponsors table on the ground floor, and so IIJ's tables in front of the door. So thank you for attending.